Schönen guten Morgen aus der hessischen Landesvertretung in
Good
Brüssel.
morning,
Wir sitzen hier
everyone. From
heute,
the
nicht wir
representation
beiden,
of the
aber
state of
ich sitze
Hessen
heute zum
here in
vierten Mal
Brussels.
im Auftrag der hessischen
I'm sitting here for the fourth
Landesregierung und
time
Landesvertretung Brüssel,
in
über
name
dringende
of
europäische
the
Themen zu reden. Der
permanent representation
vierte
of the state of Hessen to talk
Podcast,
about
Entschuldigen Sie, es sind so viele Podcasts im Augenblick.
European
Der vierte
topics. I said
digitale
podcast, but it's not a podcast.
Diskussion
It's our
über die Folgen
fourth
der
digital
Corona-Krise, die wir hier
discussion
heute aus
event, our
Brüssel
live stream
führen. Ich sitze
about
hier
the
zusammen mit Lutz
consequences of the
Güllner,
coronacrisis.
seines
I'm here
Zeichens
with Lutz
Leiter der
Güllner,
Eaststratcom des Auswärtigen
director of
Dienstes
the
der Europäischen
Eaststratcom
Kommission.
of
Da
the
geht es um
Foreign Policy
Desinformation
Service
und das ist das Thema
of
des
the
heutigen
European Commission.
Tages, die Desinformation in Zeiten der
And we're talking about
Corona-Krise, ein wichtiges Thema.
disinformation.
Und wir werden ein
Disinformation
bisschen
in
darüber
times of the
reden,
corona
was an
crisis is a very
Desinformation
important topic, and
verbreitet
we're
wird,
going to
wie es
talk
verbreitet
about
wird und alles, was
what
im
kind of
weiteren Sinne
disinformation
damit
is spread, how
zusammenhängt.
it is
Lutz
spread, and
Güllner ist
everything
seit
that's connected and
20
related
Jahren
to
in
that.
Brüssel, eines dieser
Mr. Güllner
Brüsseler
has been in
Urgesteine,
Brussels
wie man
for
sie hier viele
20
trifft, hat sich
years.
lange, lange Zeit mit
True
Handelspolitik
Brusselite in
beschäftigt,
Brussels
woher wir uns auch
politics,
schon
has
lange,
been
lange Zeit kennen.
busy in
Deswegen sind
trade
wir heute beim
policy for a
deutschen
long
Du,
time,
nicht
which is
beim
how we've
Grüßwort,
known
heute
each
bin
other
ich
for
beim
a
Du
very
und
long
Sie,
time.
um das nur von vornherein klarzustellen, dass niemand denkt, wir sind
Just
zu
to
kuschelig
make
beieinander,
this
aber manchmal
very
kann man
clear,
ausblenden, wenn man sich schon lange kennt.
if we seem close to each other, we've known each other for a long time.
Und vor allen Dingen auch in
Just to
die
state this
kleinen
upfront. So
Skandälchen, die
let's
es in
get,
diesem Zusammenhang
but
schon
before we
gegeben
get
hat,
into the discussion
genauer
and into
reinschauen,
several
möchte ich aber
small
zunächst
scandals that
einmal
have
nach
happened in
Frankfurt
this area, in this
zurückspielen
field,
und
I
Frau
would like to
Puttrich, der
pass the floor
Europaministerin der
to
hessischen Landesvertretung, das
Frankfurt
Wort
to
erteilen. Dankeschön.
Minister Puttrich. Thank you.
Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first digital event. Today we have a very topical subject, disinformation during the corona crisis. Are there people or governments that have an interest in spreading disinformation? Yes, there are. There have always been people that spread conspiracy theories, and states have their own interests. The European Commission has realized that there are states that want to see favorable reporting in the media about the way they've tackled the crisis, such as China, or there are states that knowingly spread disinformation, such as Russia. We're going to discuss this, what we're going to evaluate. And the question is, what happens after disinformation? Because we build our own opinion. We shape our opinion after we've heard information. And if the information is wrong, the opinion can be wrong. So this is our event that you can follow in different languages. There is English interpretation on a separate channel. And I'm very happy to see that we have viewers and or listeners from different countries in past events: Spain, Poland, France, Belgium, and Germany. And I'm certain many viewers from different countries will look at our event today. Please enjoy today's event. And once again, I will tell you what I tell you every time. I'm looking forward to see you once again in person.
Now we can enter in the discussion. We have 40 minutes of time. You can obviously ask questions about the context of the corona crisis, because this is what we are concentrating on today. As I already said, there are some scandals in the last few days when we talk about corona. But coming back to this aspect, I would like to talk about disinformation. As far as the corona crisis is concerned, do you see more disinformation from states? There are so many things. People are talking about Bill Gates, about vaccines, and so on. First of all, wholeheartedly welcome to everybody who is listening and following our meeting here. And to answer your question, yes, we have much more information, which is due to the fact that people have a lot of time, free time, spare time to look after these informations. And with this, we also have a higher volume, a higher number of false informations. But we should make a step back. What is a false information and what is so dramatic about it? And the whole debate, I think there is a very difficult point. It is that not all the disinformation or propaganda can be put into the same pot. We have to distinguish. We have three big categories. First of all is a hot discussion that is also led on the social media, and in this case we do have disinformation, but this is a debate. Or these are informations, then sometimes are correct, but sometimes they are not, but they are real. They are coming from people that want to say what they think about the whole thing. And there are for sure also things that people don't want to hear, but this is really a societal question. The second category is even more important, because what kind of informations do we have in this debate that might lead to huge problems like informations about strategies, how to protect against the virus, and these might have also effects on people. There are several other things, and sometimes people are also talking about hidden agreements, and there are also sectors where we already made some rulings, and then we have a third category which we want to talk about. This is a debate. These are activities that we consider disinformation because there is a manipulation of this kind of debate. And where is the limit in between the second and the third category? It seems easy, but I guess it's not that easy because we see this is, we can say, okay, this is someone who is telling things that are not true, and the other is disinformation. Yes, that makes our work very difficult, and we can't work with these three blocks because they are obviously connected one to another, like the different theories we have or somebody might have, or it might even be something that is led and coordinated from people inside the state or even not in a statal function. And not everything is a fake news. There are really differences. The third category, we had some indications from the Commission. What were the different disinformations we have seen from the side of the Commission? Well, we already had a look at it some time ago, especially as far as the volume is concerned due to the corona crisis. And in the third category, in the manipulation part, there is a coordination, and we can see that there is people are talking always and pushing always in the same direction. Our democracy and our systems that we have right now are not able to handle that kind of crisis. This is one point that is repeated all the time, and obviously also with examples. But the examples are examples that are exact, or are they like invented? The problem is that there's always some truth in it or some opinion that we have anyhow to support in our society. But then the manipulation, how you blow up this opinion, how to multiply this in order to get it to a mainstream. That means that I as a user, I go into the internet and I get all these kinds of informations as far as the democratic system is concerned, and that we are not able to handle that crisis, and that we should also think about other forms of state and democracy. It's not only critics as far as politics is concerned. This is necessary, but the problem is the manipulation in this part. And which are the means you can use? There are two parts. Which strategies would I like to use to influence? With what kind of examples? Sometimes we have really lies we have to tackle with, and this gets into bigger strategies because you have this narrative, and also the idea that there might be an alternative. This is the content. We have to be very careful about content. But there's a second category that this is a technical opportunity I might use. We have this so-called automatic accounts. They are not as important as a couple of years ago, and this is something very interesting for those who are not seeing this every day. We can today buy some. I can buy followers on the dark net. I can buy likes from other people, and without paying a lot, I can push my information if it is wrong or right. And it might seem that the whole society is discussing about the same topic. These are the technical opportunities we have nowadays, and we have to control. I mean, buy something is one thing, but can I distinguish if somebody bought the likes, or is there a discussion? Well, this is not easy too. There are gray zones, you have to be careful, but there, it's not only my job, my work, there's a whole discussion, and it's not easy because I can't see, this is Mr. Kafsack, he bought likes or wanted to push his opinion thanks to 2,000 euro he had paid. You have to work really like see which connections do we have in between the different accounts, or who are the users who are also multiplying this opinion, because very often we have a name but there's no person behind it, and all these things get connected with other users or with multipliers that are new, that are only repeating the same topic in order to multiply. And what can we do? It seems we need to have a secret service to see all these. But you are working with official funds, or am I wrong? Yes, we have official public funds, at least in what we are presenting outside. We don't say, oh, you are manipulated, and we can't say we can't tell you how this is working. This is the context I have seen. Can I see where this is coming from, and can I handle all this? This is very important. But obviously, we also have to do this together with partner organizations, people who do know the internet very profoundly, and they see how the net is made. And We are also working with the platforms. And in my eyes, they have a huge responsibility in this context. Now, the most important question we already said what disinformation is, how it looks like. Where is disinformation coming from? You said they are trying to tell people that democracy is not the right social form. Where is all this coming from? You have to be careful to talk only about one actor. It's not only Russia. We will talk about that. There are several people, organizations that are that we see in the social media. And this is obviously also the history of our own team that started with eStratCom, and now we have a strategic communication division, and we are also looking at other actors. But we, to come back to your question, we are looking what kind of history is there, what is the content of these messages, and which clusters are we talking about, which is the discussion that is coming out of it. And then we try to go back to actors we already know or do not know yet, and much more important, what we have as a behavior from their side. We have a website, one actor, and the whole thing is multiplied. And just to answer the next question, who is such an actor? I might say I might speak about Russia Today, financed by the Russian state. Obviously, it's not 100% disinformation, but it's a very important actor in this kind of multiplication in wrong informations, false informations they are giving.
Could we say that in the context of the corona crisis, most disinformation is coming from Russia? Could we say that? I'm not sure if most of the disinformation is coming from Russia today, but what we can observe, what we can measure, what we can see, and that we talk about with our partners, is that the lion's share, the biggest part, is connected to a disinformation system or network that is heavily linked to Russia, but it's not the only source. I'm going to include a question from Hans-Joachim Buhmann from Wuppertal. Is it connected to the idea that do we only look at Russia? But the question he is directly asking is eStratCom always sees this information coming from the East, but he also sees manipulative media tendencies within Europe and the USA. And he voiced that such an observation is that we only look at Russia, which is why we only find it in Russia. That's a legitimate question. This is also connected to our mandate, our political mandate that my team has. eStratCom has been founded in 2015 as a reaction after we have observed the events, the Crimea annexation, for example, at the time. With the beginning of the conflict in eastern Ukraine, we have seen a huge increase in disinformation activities performed by Russian actors. Our original mandate, which is why it's called eStratCom as well, our original mandate is directly connected to Russia. Now, over time, our mandate has expanded. This is connected to the European Parliament election, where we've seen that this is not only coming from Russia. We have to look further. We look to other places. I work for the European External Action Service, so my mandate goes beyond the borders of the European Union. I have to look outside of the European Union. There are good reasons for that, because internal actors cannot be put on the same level than external actors. There may be links, frequently even, but if you look at the actions of external actors, there is a very strong legitimacy in our analyzing this and proactively asking questions why this happens, why there are so many Russian multiplicators in public debates in Germany or in the German-speaking area about the topics of migration, for instance. Why do they insert themselves into this discussion? What's their legitimacy in there? And our goal is to uncover this, to shine a light on this. But to conclude this particular topic, so traditionally, we're looking at Russia. Yes, it is legitimated simply by the volume of disinformation coming from Russia, but we're expanding our field of view to other countries. Just as a follow-up question, because this has been mentioned within the question, within Europe, you said that this is not possible because you're the external action service. So me personally and our team. But what's with the USA? Because there's always the suspicion included in this question, subtly, that there is a lot of nonsense being spread, and that we shouldn't we take a closer look at information coming from that side. So we get back to what I said initially. We have to clearly define what is problematic, when it becomes a problem, and it is when someone, a state actor or government, not just nonsense. I think that happens too frequently for that. Would you like to go into detail? No, I don't want to go into detail on that. Just generally say there may be many state actors spewing nonsense, but if there is intentional, coordinated propagation of disinformation, coordinated activities, and if I can link those with state-financed structures, that's what defines what I have to look at in my function. My analysis, the analysis of my team, is that we do not have state-financed coordinated activity from the USA that works in the same way from what we see in Russia. That does not mean that we do not have to expand our scope, and that we shouldn't distinguish, because we cannot just limit ourselves to a very good limited, but there's always the question of the mandate, and the definition of our task is very important. It's not a purely academic question, but a question that has far-ranging consequences and fundamental impact on our work. We've spoken about Russia, we've spoken about the USA, and there's of course the elephant in the room is China currently. Of course, also because after the latest report, there's been the point of criticism, especially by reports in the New York Times, but elsewhere as well, that there was an internal report that was very critical of China, and a published report a few days later, so published a little bit later, that was, well, less, was a lot milder, a lot calmer, and that left China in a much better light and position. And the question has been asked, just to get back to this general criticism of the point of view of China, is this criticism justified? Is the report justified? So let me just start by saying this. What are we looking at, and why are we looking at it, and how do we process this? We are looking at disinformation activities. We're looking who does it. We've mentioned Russia. We have discovered one phenomenon that we see more and more, that we have more and more Chinese actors, or actors that have a connection to China. And we haven't held this information back in our reporting. We have clearly stated and mentioned and written it into our reports, but you have to be careful in these things, because that brings us back into the gray area that we've mentioned earlier, that we're just throwing apples and oranges together, that we have disinformation, misinformation, who does what, that we're mixing all this up, and that is problematic. We've seen that we have more and more Chinese activity in the area of disinformation. We want to indicate that, we want to be vigilant of that, and that is mentioned in the report. Now, to get into the question of why we have two different reports, that's fairly simple. There are internal procedures where we have our own hierarchy, our political level, that we inform what's happening. The information that's coming from our partners, this is just so you know, for your setting up your own policy, but this is information that is for you, but we do not want this to see this information published. You should have this, you should know this, you cannot publish this. That is, of course, something that we know, but our task is informing the public. So we have, that's why we always, when I say always, we've published 3 reports of this. We've had one in March, one in April, one at the beginning of April, one at the 24th of April, and the public report is, of course, looking different than the internal report because it's not an internal document. And if you just let me finish my train of thought here, it's very close to what we show and tell our colleagues. There are a few things that have been taken out, things that we weren't quite certain of.
Now you have to help me because there are different things one next to the other. When we have the internal information, and then obviously the question, are we sure that this is disinformation? Which has been the reason for the 2 versions, internal information that should be internal only, or internal informations are internal informations. We have them, we talk with our colleagues about it, but they are not for the public. What we are writing in our public documents has to be accurate. For example, if partners say this is information that are only for you, but you can't go public with this. And therefore we have 2 different reports, and one is for the internal use and the other one is really the report, and the report that can be seen by everybody on our website was very clear, and we didn't change the tone, or we were very clear, and this has nothing to do with the fact that the Chinese have made some pressure. We are not allowing the Chinese to make pressure on us. And we said simply we have one internal report and one public report, just like the 2 times before. And those who haven't seen the report yet, I would ask you to have a look at it. I guess it is quite explicit, and we want to follow this topic just to keep up with this point. Somebody who read the report is Michael Gala, who is part of this commission. A question that Mr. Borrell couldn't ask last week. He is asking that this information will be collected and published in order to make people aware of it. And how can it be that we have 2 categories, one internal and one external? Is it really only due to this particular internal information, or what is it? With partner organizations, we see it, but we do not know up to which point this is the rule, and we want to talk about it with our colleagues, but it's clear that the partners, or we ourselves, say it is this is an information that shouldn't be published yet. We should check on it, or it is part of another category. Everything we put in our public reports has to be very clear. in internal reports, we can say a researcher gave us some information. We can name the person, and we can't do this in a public report. This is really the big difference in all that. So another question that I received, Mrs. Riedel, she is asking, who is distributing fake news or publishing fake news? I don't think it's only about Russia or China. Well, we are also looking what the internet platforms are publishing as international actors. We very often have the government of Iran that is mentioned. We hear North Korea and other names. But be careful. This might be similar activities, but not necessarily the same. They are just put in between everything just to make people be doubtful. And this is obviously very interesting in this moment of hyperinformation, that we really have to look at who is publishing which kind of information. There is no problem in it, but if this becomes manipulation or via the technical way or with a clear goal via a coordinated and financed way, lead to distortions in the public debate, then we do have a problem. There are different groups, sometimes parties, we can see that very clearly, and obviously also external statal and non-statal actors. We are not looking only at what the other governments are doing. We see in the Mediterranean, and this is important for our member states, we see a higher activity of the Islamic State, the IS. And with the Corona crisis, they started to make more disinformation, and this is something that we want to make clear. And I would like to come back to what we said before about Russia Today. Are there other medias in this context behind the platforms that are acting in this field? I don't want to say this kind of medium is disinformating. Obviously, these media are multiplicating, not because they are called Russia Today or Sputnik, but because of their actions. What we don't want to do is write a blacklist. This is not what we should do in a kind of government. What is right, what is wrong. Our job is to explain and to talk about the danger of manipulation, especially from external actors, and then especially I would like to explain that we have to tackle these questions as society and in politics. I have a question from Matthias Zimmer. What are the experiences with disinformation during elections? You already mentioned the European elections and the analysis of after the elections was considered not right. Yes, this was our report. Elections are something where our democracy has a kind of stress test. And we are also against influencing and the whole danger is coming out in these procedures. We have seen this in 2016 in the US, and not only there. And there are somebody might also remember what happened during the French elections, where we had this manipulated campaign in one instrument that is like being very much higher than also the different platforms. So we are cooperating with our colleagues in order to protect the scenario with obviously also logistic questions. We have to protect the procedures. We have to connect the member states in between them in order to exchange also the information they have.
So this brings us to a core question. How to identify information is a difficult enough question, and drawing attention to it is one thing, but how do I manage this? How do I handle this? Should I? Must I? Take legislative action? Is what we have and agreements with the platform sufficient? How to handle the information? What's the answer to this? Well, this is not an easy question to answer, and it's really difficult to give an answer based on the reasons. We've talked a lot about what's happening. My team is very active in this, and we need to know what's going on. Without knowing the actual you cannot develop a policy on this and give a good applicable answer to this. In the European Union, we also have to ask a question: what can we do together at the European level? Because the member states also have to act themselves. We have to network ourselves better with our partners. We have, for example, an early warning system that we've created ahead of the European elections in order just to inform each other. What do we realize in our own country? How do we communicate this to the other countries? And one of the core elements here, at least from my point of view, is what obligations do different actors have in this, especially social media in this. And we have taken one approach to this. Mostly, this is a voluntary approach. It's based on voluntary participation. It was a good start to see what situation are we heading into, what are the things we have to pay attention to, what do we expect. And the discussion we're currently having is how do we put this on the next level? What's the next step? And we can, I think, clearly form that there has been some progress. That's something we have to admit, that the platforms have done a lot. If you go to your Twitter account, the first thing you will see is here you see is a link to reliable information about the Coronacrisis. But what's the next step? Because that's where we'll get very interesting. We're talking about freedom of speech on a digital level. What are my possibilities to intervene here? Can we just say this opinion is bad or wrong and this opinion is correct? So this is not about from acting as the state agency or the companies that they get to decide what's right or wrong, or what's allowed or what isn't allowed. No, cannot make any huge announcements of what's supposed to be done, but I think two things are important. Transparency, first of all. If I do not know what is happening on these platforms, how these platforms are being tricked potentially, how their algorithms are being played, are being tricked by the ill-intentioned actors, then we have a huge problem. And this is, of course, leaves the ball squarely in the field of platforms. They have to be vigilant. They have to be, so if, for example, you have a warning that as soon as you connect to the platform, that's one thing. But to do some applicable research about their own platforms to really find out how these campaigns are being implemented, are being executed. And the second element is a very complicated aspect, and that's the one of responsibility. what kind of system of not only risk analysis, but also risk prevention do we need to create in order to tackle, to mitigate that risk? Fact-checking, what kind of fact-checking do we need? What kind of internal structure do we need to have to just get the information, the correct information, to develop structures that allow looking into this discussion on the platforms and to find out how disinformation functions, is spread on these platforms, what kind of measures we can take, be they legislative measures or other measures of any kind. This is something we're currently discussing, but it has been mentioned several times publicly that the voluntary approach is good but insufficient. Yes, that is also what I would say, what my team would say, what neutral observers say. We have had a good start, but we have to go one step or several steps further. But this is, of course, a very complicated field to navigate. Just on a legal level already, and who decides what can go in on these platforms and what can't, and that's a very complicated question. And this is nothing new, really. And this is somewhat connected to consumer protection as well. What is the goal here? Because we want to protect the users and consumers of these platforms, of information, so that they cannot become, against their will, victims of disinformation. Be dangerous disinformation or illegal disinformation, where we have some laws about already, or misinformation, or that knowingly spread disinformation. That's what we tackle. That's our goal. I'm very interested in finding out how this will be set up. For example, would Facebook check if the facts that I'm spreading are correct? But I could assume that as a journalist will only spread correct information, which is of course nonsense, because everybody can make a mistake, and that with a mistake spread misinformation, not disinformation, in this case just misinformation, but still. And there are two questions I would like to go through, even if they're very difficult, from Kurt Gönig. Your first question: can we get some level of herd immunity, so 60+% of the population? This hasn't been really clearly tackled in the media, and I already see you shrugging. I think this perception isn't quite correct as a representative of the media. It has been talked about, but the problem is that in the current political situation, the strategy isn't 100% clear and can't be 100% clear as the situation develops. This is less about reporting than about actually knowing. And there is a question by Gabriela Franz from Gelkheim, actually 3 questions. About the Green Deal. This is something we've discussed last week here. I don't think there's a question I really need to forward to you, because this would be depending on how you look at it, above or below your pay grade. For example, about flights, vacation flights, these are questions that have been in it. We do not want to ignore these questions, but this is not correct interview partner for these questions. So we will just have to conclude with a rather unsatisfying result for these last 2 questions, but we want to acknowledge your questions, but we have to admit that we cannot answer every question, especially when we're talking about disinformation. We would do ourselves and everyone else a disservice if we talk about things that we do not have the correct information to answer properly. Lutz, I thank you very much for the interview. We've learned a lot about what disinformation is, how difficult it is to limit the border, the separation between disinformation and misinformation, who's active in this, and it's a very difficult to point fingers. But what we can see is, of course, that in this crisis is just a very easy opportunity for the those people who spread information to spread even more information, to do it more effectively. We're, of course, going to stay on top of the topic as best we can. I would like to invite you to a virtual cup of coffee or tea or whatever you'd like, or lunch maybe, because we are approaching the end of our event, and therefore I would just like to thank you all for watching and listening. Goodbye.